All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to another PWA Studio Community Sync meeting. So today we have a pretty light agenda, but we have a couple of really nice demos from the team. We'll do a quick review on where we're at with the roadmap, some of the upcoming kind of priorities for the team, and where our focus will be over the next, month or two with feature work. And then we'll kind of open up to anything from anyone on the call, any questions, and we'll wrap from there. How's that sound? Sound good to everybody? Okay, so
Absolutely.
first up for demos, I see Jimmy on the line. So Jimmy is going to walk us through what the team has been doing over the past few weeks for the new landing page experience for Venia Storefront.
Yeah, I just need
Jimmy.
a minute to get my local set up.
Okay. If you need a minute, we can also jump to Andy, or we can wait. We can throw some filler in here.
Is that what I am? Filler?
Yeah,
I
why don't
meant
you go
like
first?
filler,
Why don't you
filler
go
other
first?
than Andy.
I gotta set my local up real quick. So,
Okay. So let's go with Andy then. I meant filler as in like conversation filler, Andy. Like maybe tell a couple jokes, you know? But also we can do your demo first.
All right. Well, I don't have any jokes. Although I did start teaching my son knock knock jokes, and he's super pumped about this.
Hey, Andy.
So let's see. Later. Wait. What? What's up?
Knock, knock.
Oh man, who's there?
To.
To who?
To whom?
Ah, you got me. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, cool. I just wanted to go over the portal component real quick. So we had and you can kind of read along while I'm talking, but we had a modal component that was really just creating a React portal, and would give it like a default if you didn't send in like a target container to render your contents in. Um, and so as we were using that for all of our modals, all of our like kind of slide in from the right or on desktop when it pops up in the middle. But since we kind of standardized those into the dialog component, this modal component that actually created React portals was confusing. The dialog component actually has like a modal mode that you can set it to. And so there was some confusion there. And so what this PR does, it's pretty far along in the pipeline. It's not merged yet, but probably will be soon. It just renames modal or to portal. So like, I guess I can show you the changes. Oh man. So most of the good stuff, sorry, we're gonna have to scroll through some tests and stuff, but the good stuff is down here. So you kind of see here modal is renamed, moved, whatever to portal. And I just updated, some of the internal names and things to call it portal from now on. And then what happens to modal, since it's been around for a while and we're not sure who externally is using it in their own projects, if you created your own, React portal using our modal component, as we've kind of kept that modal uh, acting as a React portal for now. So this just like renames, re-exports the portal component and calls it modal. So your stuff will keep working. For now, we did add this kind of deprecation notice about like, hey, ideally, we get rid of this modal component entirely, or this modal component could like compose the dialog component in its modal mode, which would make a little more sense. But really, the only kind of that would be a breaking change. You would have to go through and obviously update all instances of modal to portal, which is exactly what the rest of this PR does, by the way. Here's one example. It just goes through and everywhere where we were using the modal component, we're now using the portal component. It does read a little bit nicer too. It's more explicit about what's going on. There's no magic like this modal component here doesn't actually create a modal for you. That's all like done by the modal class and all that stuff. So it's a little more straightforward now. You know, you're creating a portal and putting some content inside of it. So that is pretty much the extent of this one. Like I said, I think the highlights are you should use the new portal component where you were using modal. Because at some point in the future, we will probably change our modal component. And that'll be a breaking change, and we'll kind of highlight it. But just wanted to give you a heads up. So that is it for me.
Cool. I'm set up now, so I think we're good to go.
Well, quick question from Stephen there for Andy in the chat. So Stephen asked, are the new portal and old modal APIs identical?
Oh, yeah, good question. So because I'll start sharing my screen again. Because Modal just literally re-exports Portal, it is the same. And the changes that you see in this file are really just changing the name of Modal to Portal. It's in Portal, it lives in Portal.js now, but Modal just re-exports that same exact thing. So they're not actually two different components right now. It's the same exact thing. So yes, the APIs are the same.
Any other questions from anyone on the line for Andy? Feel free to use the chat as well. Alrighty.
Cool, cool.
Well, thanks, Andy. And next
Did I give
up,
you enough filler content? Maybe?
well, it's debatable. Maybe we'll have to go to the polls and check later.
Yeah, knock knock.
But apparently Jimmy's ready now, so I think you did the job.
Nailed it.
Nailed
Yeah,
it.
we're good to go. Yeah, I had to go through another yarn install. So, all right, I will share that. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So this is venia.magento.com. This is what the old homepage looks like. Everyone's familiar with it now. The 5 circles that we've always had. This was essentially always a to-do page for us. We never actually designed a true homepage like you'd have on most sites. And so we just kind of gave ourselves some quick links to the categories. But what we've been working on is a new homepage built with Page Builder. So it's a good opportunity for us to show off what Page Builder can do and also to try out our new design, which you may have seen hints of through the UX demos. So we've got some of the classic Page Builder components in here, including a slider. And we've got some callouts, which we would use for categories, and then just some different banners that might work, and a product carousel, as well as the first piece of new design coming in with the new footer for the site. Of course, all this is going to be responsive. So we'll take all these banners, switch them down to mobile size. And this is where we're going to start taking pieces of the site over time here. So we'll be tackling the header soon, and we'll start working with buttons, typography, and in the process, this should become a lot more like a theme, where right now we've only got a few CSS variables for things here and there, border colors, different grays, text color, but we only have like 1 or 2 of those variables. They're not actually in a hierarchy like you might have if you've built a theme with less or whatever, where one variable is dependent on another, is dependent on another. will have a lot more variables and a lot more logical hierarchy to them when it comes to the different colors in our palette and how we use them. So this was a start in that direction. So, and also, a chance for us to play around with Page Builder. So if you're looking to improve on Venia's homepage, I suggest you take a look at Page Builder components and see what you can do with them. Oh, and I have one more thing to look at real quick while I still have the mic, I guess. Also coming soon for us, we had an open PR from Fuman to switch us from React Head, which was built by New York Times developers, over to React Helmet Async, also built by New York Times developers. So those of you familiar with React Helmet for updating title and meta tags of the page as you navigate around should see something that's more familiar to you, but also more performant than the option that we had chosen. So got that PR in, made some changes, and should see that landing soon.
Great. So thanks, Jimmy. Any questions for Jimmy? Lars?
Yeah, so just
Go ahead, Jordan.
to make sure, if you're running a community edition of Magento, you're still having the default homepage, I guess, right? Since Page Builder is not in the community version.
Correct. The homepage will be still the default page.
So are there any plans to also have a more production-ready homepage for people that are using PWA Studio on a community edition version of Magento?
So we're not going to build a new homepage outside of Page Builder, because Page Builder is kind of our solution for doing a WYSIWYG page, But you could take a lot of the content and make a CMS block. Obviously, what I actually recommend for people to do, is to build their own home pages, right? So Page Builder offers some of the common components, but if you're familiar with PWA Studio, right, the way to get the most customization possible is going to be to write your own React components, make a home page component, right? That'll give you full control, to let you write optimal CSS and all the rest.
Exactly.
But if what you're looking to do is have a marketing person work on the home page, right, someone who's not going to be familiar with React and such, then Page Builder is kind of our suggested way to do that. So the page we're building is more for non-developers, right, benefit than for developers' benefit, right? If you're a developer, I think you should build it in React. Really get the full range of options.
Yep. So yeah, that makes sense. But what I was thinking about is if I'm a developer and using a community edition of Magento, then CMS blocks would still be the preferred way to create a homepage, right?
Depending on what you're trying to serve, right? If you need people to edit CMS blocks that are not developers and you want those updates, then yeah, that's your option for sure.
Cool.
But if you're a developer and you're building your own site, right, you'll always have more power if you're not working through any sort of CMS platform, right? Working right through the JavaScript and CSS.
Yep. All right, makes sense.
I just wanted to add a note, Jordan. So Scott and I wanted to be the non-technical people that worked with Page Builder to do some of the initial work on this homepage. And I'd like to share maybe a couple of the observations we made. Even for somebody non-technical, the amount of design flexibility Page Builder allows you is limited. if you have a very straightforward layout where there's nothing kind of laying on top of one another, everything just falls neatly into a grid one under the other, it's possible to achieve something good. But if not, it takes kind of some ramp up time for us to figure out how to achieve that. I mean, Scott finally resorted to the blocks where he was able to kind of approximate the design. But I think once Jimmy started working on it, a lot of that had to be stripped out in order to truly achieve the design that we wanted. So that is something to keep in mind if using Page Builder to construct a design, is that it's not as sophisticated as, you know, design imagination would be. You'd have to kind of pare back your expectations on what you can achieve.
Yeah.
Well, or just get much more creative with your CSS, which is what we did, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still a bit wondering, like, what is right now, if you need to create a custom homepage, PWA Studio is not really offering something for community versions of Magento, right? Like, you can add a CMS page, but you still have to do a lot of work yourself instead of just having a way to implement a banner or just a simple product block like you would do in regular Magento homepages. So I guess that's where I'm going after.
Would you find it more useful to have a set of React components like we have for the rest of the app that you could use to implement a homepage? You know,
yeah,
in the
maybe
app,
we can.
just like any other page.
Yeah, maybe we can
Okay.
figure something out to maybe parse WYSIWYG widgets. So you can just have a CMS block and then stack widgets on top of each other, which basically result into the same result as you would have with Page Builder, but just way more limited.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're lacking a way to create CMS pages, including a homepage for non-Page Builder users.
Yeah, so I'd say that's definitely something, like, you know, we wouldn't say that delivering any sort of kind of CMS page or homepage experience for CE is off the table, right? I think just for the context here, we delivered the Page Builder PWA integration at the beginning of the year, and we saw a clear opportunity here where we wanted to improve the landing page. We had Page Builder. We felt we could do it with relatively little developer intervention, as Samya pointed out, by using Page Builder. So we kind of like jumped on that opportunity to improve the landing page now. So I'd say in the future here, like, there's definitely more on, everything's on the table in terms of evaluating delivering additional content page management or landing page experience for CE or whatever the case might be, right? This is not definitely an exclusive, like this is the only way we will do landing page. We'll evaluate those things as we move forward, for sure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, make total sense.
Yeah. Any other questions here for Jimmy? Comments? Okay, great. So quickly, I think that wraps the demos from the team. I would love to just quickly talk about our roadmap here for PWA Studio. Let me share my screen. We'll talk about kind of the more, my screens are a mess. We will talk about the more kind of text-based roadmap here for a second. So at a high level, where we're at today with PWA Studios, obviously here in Q2, we've been working on delivering new features across the storefront, specifically with the cart and the checkout experience. As you guys have seen over the last few demos, we've made some significant progress in those areas. Extensibility is something that has landed recently with the from Mr. Zetlen there on the initial framework for extensibility. We've done project scaffolding earlier this year. And so throughout the rest of this quarter, what we're really focused on doing is cleaning up and finishing up the rest of those cart and checkout experiences, the rest of those kind of Venia storefront features, and then wrapping that up and moving on to the next set of kind of feature areas. So the coming up next are the a mini cart refactor. So as we've talked about on previous calls, we've created a new cart and checkout experience, and that necessitates us to go back into the existing Venia mini cart, kind of remove those checkout flows from that mini cart, make it a true mini cart, and then now defer or use the new cart and checkout experience. So that's coming up next. As Jimmy talked about on his demo. So we're moving into the new kind of Venia styling and Venia branding and Venia design. So there's some work there with style guide, with redoing the Venia header that we are prioritizing. And then the next big piece of feature work that we have coming up is My Account. So My Account, the team has just recently finished kind of with looking at all the designs, doing story decomposition, and now it's stacked up in our backlog to pick up next. My Account is a wealth of features. It's a significant amount of work and value that will be delivered with that. And so over the next few weeks, you'll start to see us demoing. Hopefully, not hopefully, we will start demoing My Account, right? And you'll start to see some progress against that. As well as continued progress on things like extensibility. We've heard the feedback around scaffolding, and we've created some kind of stories in an epic to contain some work to improve some of the scaffolding that we released earlier this year. And then you'll continue to see improvements across quality and performance with us addressing bugs, things like that. So that's kind of the high level look at, hey, the next few months in terms of feature focus around refactoring a mini cart, the style guide and kind of redesign work, My Account, and then kind of the continued focus on developer experience with scaffolding, extensibility, and then the quality and performance improvements. So any questions on kind of what we're focused on next or comments?
You got a question in the chat that's asking about feature parity in My Account.
Sure. So that's a great question. So with My Account, we've definitely, and I'll let Sami kind of jump in here where maybe I misspeak, but we started off with, of course, feature parity in mind and looking at Luma and asking ourselves the question, okay, what are all the features that are in Luma, and now how do we port those over into the new Venia experience? I think initially what we've done is try to focus on what we feel based on some additional research and some analysis that we've done with breaking down those features. We've tried to prioritize what holds the highest shopper value, both shopper and merchant value for the My Account experience. So we've kind of we've created a set number of features that we will deliver in that My Account experience, and I believe we've demoed that previously on a call, and if not, we'll definitely demo the new design. But so that includes things like favorites lists, order history, account information, communication preferences or kind of email subscription opt-in, and then stored payments. I believe those are all the things that we've prioritized in this initial delivery for My Account. And then we've created follow-on phases of My Account for some of those other pieces. But so I'd say, the short answer is there won't be 100% parity, but we do feel that there would be parity with the major features that we believe hold the most value in the My Account. And so we'll definitely, be transparent with what we're delivering in that My Account epic as we move forward here, and what's included and what's not included. And so we can have more discussion on that as we move forward with picking up My Account. Sami, you have anything to add there?
No, I think you covered most of it. I think the only thing worth noting is that Luma is kind of a repository of both B2C and B2B, kind of an intersection of the two where My Account is concerned. And one thing we've tried to do is draw a line for B2C and look at the 80/20 use case out there when kind of deciding what to do in this first phase, right? Forgive me if I'm misspeaking here, but that was kind of the discussion we had on, what we would do first in My Account is we would support the most commonly occurring pieces of functionality and use cases, both based on looking at websites out there and, the research effort that Catherine and Scott had run last month to validate some of those hypotheses, and that's kind of the foundation for what you would see coming up.
Great. So any other questions? Awesome. So we definitely welcome the feedback. I have to go through and make sure that all of our public-facing roadmaps are updated. There's of course the public roadmap in the GitHub wiki, as well as some of these slides that we do share out. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out about the roadmap specifically or any of the team's priorities.
There's a
Happy to
question,
check further.
Andrew. There's a question about wish lists and implementation with Page Builder. Don't quite understand the question, but it's in the chat.
I cannot see the
more,
chat because okay.
it's more asking around, like, it'll be implemented in a similar manner as the page builder was implemented, as multi-wish list is a commerce-only feature, right? So like base wish list implementation would be fully featured, and then if they're running a commerce edition, you would use the extensibility framework to inject in the multi-wish list functionality on top of it, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure we've thought through the specific implementation details, but we have called out that there is the distinction between having a single wish list and then multi-wish list functionality. And so as we move forward with picking that up, maybe Jimmy or James, you guys want to jump in on how we plan to implement, but I think it's in similar ways.
I would expect that, yeah. I would expect that we would have both the EE.js and the CE.js pattern, same as we've had in other places, for that particular difference between the multi and the single wish list.
I think ultimately we will move away from the EEJS, CEJS approach in our core, but not for the foreseeable future. It's fairly simple to understand. Going forward, I think we may end up lifting that concept into an extension, or we may end up adding another way to resolve when the underlying Magento instance is enterprise. You could certainly do some kind of GraphQL, sort of the same way that we grab other site info at build time. You could also kind of check the set of installed modules. It's something that we've been discussing. But that's not something that we want to go for right now because there's the deployment questions around it. But we're also taking suggestions. I think the CE and EEJS thing is pretty sustainable for now for most use cases. But if you have a big problem with one of those use cases, or you have a proposal for a better way to do it, we're all ears. All ears. Every single part of our body is ears.
Does that account for things like a lot of the account dashboard is configurable in the system config in Magento? Like I can enable or disable multiple wish lists. I can enable or disable the registry or accounts or things like that. Are you planning for any, like, retrieving any of that configuration stuff for the account dashboard?
I think that's got to be there. I mean, that's part of the basic. So that's part of the basic feature set and mission of PWA Studios to reflect those admin side configurations. But something like that we would determine it at runtime because an administrator may make that change and not want to deploy the PWA. In our case, I think we just want to make sure there is not. But we want to make sure that there is not a circular dependency at build time when you're figuring out what modules are even installed. That's the EE and CEJS distinction. The stuff you're talking about, we would probably resolve client to client, or maybe at the varnish layer for a given query that is not going to be very frequently variant. Then it would have cache headers so that as every phone comes up and requests what the configuration for the my account page is, then you wouldn't have to continue to go back to origin for it. But in general, things like that we would want to calculate at runtime.
Great question. Anything else? The other caveat I'd also add is, of course, our roadmap is still subject to change, as the disclaimer claimed at said at the bottom right. We are entering a phase of kind of we're finalizing second half planning, so there are still some moving pieces here. I think even on that roadmap view, you saw the internationalization was pushed further out, but based on a lot of the effort that we know that Mr. Brabender, who's just asking all those great questions, has contributed into the project, we believe that we'll be able to move that to the left, as well as some of the other pieces there. So subject to change there, but of course the main prioritization and feature focus around Minicart Refactor, new My Account, all still hold true and are fairly locked into what we're doing next. So okay, great. So if there are no other questions here, I'd open up and say, hey, do we have any questions, comments, demos from anyone on the line? Jordan, do you have anything for Community Corner?
Nope.
Light Community Corner agenda.
Until I get my banner, we have nothing.
I'm gonna do it.
You guys want to see something cool?
Yes, sure.
This wasn't planned, but I thought
this is always a trap. I feel
Not like this.
I think the community sync call can have a little one more thing as a treat sometimes. I'm going to share my screen. How does that sound?
Nice.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll be fast.
Did you do one more thing in your conference talk yesterday?
I have one more thing. So why don't we look at what my current Venia store is doing right now? It looks a lot like a current Venia store. It's over here. I have obviously got a lot of stuff open. You know, there is an additional nav item. Interesting. Oh, I've zoomed in. That's why the style doesn't look good. Whoops. There we go. Oh, let's go to a blog post. Huh. URL's working. Content's coming in. Where's that content coming from? Why, from a completely different GraphQL API, of course. It's coming from a contentful blog. Here's how we're doing it. In our PWA Studio instance, this is, again, the developer equivalent of installing a module. I am installing my experimental module, PWA Contentful Blog, and then setting the endpoint for that contentful blog. And then at that point, with a little tweak to our Apollo adapter, we are checking to see whether the operation that's running is a contentful, that is, it's a query that starts with contentful. Over here in my extension implementation, for instance, the index query is called contentful index query. Little hack, but it works. And then if it is contentful, it'll use the link to that endpoint. Otherwise, it'll use the regular Apollo link. So we can call a totally different GraphQL API with exactly the same hooks, exactly the same clients, no duplication. So how does it do all the stuff that we just saw? How does it create this page? How does it make this? Well, I added a few things to my branch of PWA Studio, and we would pair the branch turned into a pull request with this PWA Contentful Blog example experiment. It has some additional interceptors for some additional hooks, targets. This is saying, let's make a new nvar definition for the endpoints. Let's make sure that we are modules. Let's add a nav item. Send it to blog. Let's add a couple of routes, one for the blog index and one for the blog with slug. That slug parameter gets passed in. This is for development stuff. And then we have blog.js, which does a GraphQL query, returns blog data from the GraphQL query, and then blog post, which pulls out the slug just like you pull out any other URL parameter. So here we are in a completely separate repository, writing some additional top-level pages that pulls data from a completely different source and makes a nav item and adds it to the top level of the repository. Oh, sorry, the top level of the Venia store. What y'all think?
Cool.
Is it already on a pull request?
Say
I
again?
need this. Is it already on a pull request? Gimme.
Yeah, I wanted to show you guys because, again, Community Sync can have a little preview as a treat, but I don't have this code public yet. However, it's it's intended to be. It just needs better documented. But that's it. This is the way that you start integrating and syndicating other things that appear to all be part of the same GraphQL API.
Quick question. Can you show the environment file where you enable the extension?
Yeah, this is our little hack for doing local development.
Okay. I'm assuming there's going to be a config file where you will, or what's the plan for how to manage extensions?
So the plan is to do it very basically and simply by looking at, and this is what we do today, by looking at the package.json set of dependencies. So in this case, our build bus always looks at what project is being built, it's Venia, and it looks in the package for dev dependencies and dependencies. And in this case, it sees, for instance, that we have page builder as a dependency. So that's how it finds and installs page builder's targets. And when you add another dependency, like if I added, Magento research, PWA, contentful blog, Yarn would complain because this module isn't published and it doesn't exist. So I thought, well, that's a downside of using package.json, but I still want to use package.json because it's so simple. So what I did was make this exception case for if you want to test out a module without actually installing it, or it's a local dev thing, you can just add it here and then add some more. Like, for instance, Magento research, what do you want to try? You want to try Upward CSP? Sure. And then when you do a rebuild, it acts as though these two comma-separated modules have been added to the package.json. So does that answer your question?
Yes, got it. Thank you.
Cool. Anything else?
Well, it's really awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
That's it's a new part of our agenda that we call Zetlen Sneaks.
One more thing.
And one more thing.
Pumped up kicks.
All right, so I think that's it for the meeting today. So yeah, everybody have a great Friday, great weekend. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next week.
All right, have a good one, guys.
See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.